The highway stretched under a pale winter sky, sunlight glinting off patches of ice scattered across the asphalt. He sat in the passenger seat of a rented black sedan, fingers tapping nervously against his leg, while the woman beside him adjusted her makeup. In the visor mirror, the trip had been her idea, a weekend getaway miles away from the city, a secret that would give them freedom from the lives they had promised. To other people, he had agreed because it felt adventurous in the moment, reckless but exciting, the kind of mistake that only seemed real when it was too late to undo. The car arrived at the pickup point just outside the city, one of those new luxury rideshare services that offered professional drivers and tinted windows. He didn't look at the driver when he opened the back door. The heat inside the car rolled over them gently, and they climbed in, laughing softly. For the first few miles, they just spoke in low voices, the sound of the tires filling every pause. It wasn't until they hit the open stretch of the highway that something began to gnaw at him. There was something familiar about the way the driver's hands gripped the steering wheel, the way she glanced occasionally into the rear view mirror, but never long enough to meet his eyes. The rhythm of her breathing felt familiar, quiet, steady, controlled. He leaned forward slightly, trying to catch a glimpse of her face in the reflection. The light shifted through the car, and for a second, he saw the curve of her cheek, the outline of hair pinned neatly at the back of her head. A flash of disbelief ran through him like ice. His heart stuttered once, then thudded heavily. No, impossible, he thought. His wife was at her job this weekend. She had told him she was catching up on deadlines. Still, as the car rolled on, his throat tightened. The driver's voice came through the sound system, calm and even. "Seat warmers are adjustable in the back, sir. Would you like them higher?" The tone hit him like a memory. It was her voice, unmistakable. He couldn't speak. The mistress smiled lazily, saying yes, please, and leaned against him, whispering something about how fancy the service was. He didn't hear her. Every second felt stretched thin. His wife kept driving, eyes forward, face unreadable in the mirror. He knew she saw them reflected behind her. He saw the slight lift at the corner of her mouth. Not anger, but something colder. Acceptance mixed with quiet control. The silence in the car grew unbearable. The conversation died in the back seat, tension thick as fog. After an hour, she exited the highway, turning onto a long road leading to a scenic overlook. The mistress asked, half laughing, if this was a detour. The driver responded softly, almost kindly, that sometimes you need to see the view to understand where you really are. When the car stopped, the wind outside was biting. She stepped out first, opening the door for them like a professional chauffeur, her movements calm and deliberate. He watched her figure grow small against the white horizon until it blurred into the falling snow. The mistress shivered beside the car, tugging her coat tighter, muttering that the scene was insane, that they should just leave. He couldn't move. Every muscle in his body locked between disbelief and shame. The wind tore through the empty road, carrying her footsteps away. And in the silence that remained, he realized there was no anger louder than hers. Her calmness was worse than words. Finally, he climbed back into the driver's seat, his fingers trembling against the steering wheel. The leather smelled faintly of her perfume. The mistress climbed in too, slamming the door, demanding he drive. He started the engine but drove slower than before. Each mile that passed whispered pieces of the life he had just broken. The traffic signs blurred, the radio played softly, but none of it filled the emptiness that sat heavy between them. After a few minutes, he pulled over to the shoulder and shut off the radio. The mistress turned to him, eyes cold, her voice sharp. "What's wrong with you? She's probably going straight home to cry. You don't need to feel guilty now." He stared through the windshield at the snow spiraling in the air. "She doesn't cry," he said softly. "She just leaves." The woman beside him scoffed and crossed her arms, realizing too late that his silence was not going to break. He told her to get out. She argued for a second, then saw his face and stepped out without another word, slamming the door so hard it rattled. He drove alone then, tracing the road back toward the city. The heat running too high, fog building on the windows. Thoughts spiraled with the sound of the tires, how long she had known, how many signs he had missed, what it felt like for her to plan this strange, wordless farewell. He remembered the morning coffee she left for him before trips, her quiet laughter, The unspoken trust she carried even when he didn't deserve it. Everything he assumed was permanent. Vanished in the rearview mirror where the road stretched empty behind him. When he reached the city, her car sat parked exactly where she'd picked them up. The keys he still held felt heavier than metal. Inside the lobby, he found her coat draped over a chair with their wedding ring folded inside one pocket. A small note lay beneath it. Only 3 words written in her precise hand. Drive safe, goodbye. He sank into the chair, clutching the ring with numb fingers, realizing that she hadn't needed to confront him to make him understand the cost of betrayal. All she had done was show him how final silence can be. The hours after blurred into a hollow gray. He drove back to the house automatically, unaware of how he managed to steer through the traffic. Snow had stopped falling, but the streets still glistened under the streetlights. When he walked into the home they had shared, everything looked exactly the same. The boots by the door, the folded blanket on the couch, the faint scent of vanilla that always lingered near the stairs. Yet something in the air had gone still, the kind of stillness that follows right after sound shatters. Her suitcase was gone. On the dining table sat a half-finished cup of tea, cooled and untouched since morning. He touched the rim and felt the ghost of her heat, the last trace that she had existed here. He moved through the kitchen aimlessly, opening cabinets, closing them again, every motion mechanical. His guilt played back like a film. The moment she looked at him through the rearview mirror, the calm defiance in her eyes, the small smile that wasn't forgiveness but acceptance. He had tried to fill his life with noise because silence frightened him, and she had given him what he feared most. He stood at the window staring at the gray swell of clouds, wondering if she had caught a train or simply started walking, somewhere new where his memory couldn't follow. The phone rang near midnight, its tone jolting him. He picked it up out of instinct. It was her best friend's voice, cautious and wary. She told him that she had seen his wife earlier at a small cafe near the edge of town, that she didn't look angry, only tired, and that she asked her friend not to share where she was going next. Before hanging up, she said quietly that whatever happened, he should understand his wife didn't plan revenge, only escape. He sat down on the floor against the wall, listening to the dial tone fading into hum. The next morning, he called off his trip entirely. The mistress had already moved on, leaving a single text that read, "We're done," and nothing else. He deleted it and stared at the empty phone screen until sunrise. Later that day, he drove alone to the same overlook where she had left him, the wind colder than before. He stood there for a long time, watching the valley stretch out under pale daylight, the same road curling through the canyon far below. He closed his eyes, trying to picture her walking away, strong and whole, and for the first time felt a strange kind of pride beneath the guilt. She hadn't stayed to break things further. She'd chosen to keep her dignity intact, something he might never regain. Days turned into weeks, and the rhythm of his life changed without him noticing. The house stayed clean but empty. The alarm clock still rang at 6, though there was no reason to wake so early. He kept expecting to hear her, footsteps crossing the floor or the soft clink of a spoon against a teacup. Instead, there was only the echo of his own movements. Work no longer distracted him. Every meeting felt hollow and routine. He signed papers, attended conferences, smiled for photographers, but each night he drove in circles through the city before returning home, hoping in some absurd way that he might see her shadow crossing the street. The world kept turning quietly without her. One evening he parked near the same overlook where she had left him. The wind had softened, the air heavy with the scent of thawing snow. He stood looking at the endless curve of the valley until headlights flickered behind him. A small sedan passed slowly and disappeared down the hill, and for a moment he imagined it was her, driving toward a new life she had built far from his lies. He whispered an apology into the open air, knowing she would never hear it. Not long after, a single envelope arrived in the mail without a return address. Inside was a piece of paper torn from a travel brochure, a photograph of a coastline he didn't recognize, and beneath it a single sentence written in her neat, measured handwriting. Sometimes leaving is the only way to stay honest. There was no name, no greeting, but she hadn't needed one. He sat at the table for hours, the paper trembling between his hands. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was closure. In the years that followed, he changed the way he lived, slower, simpler, stripped of the arrogance that once made him think love was a possession. He donated parts of his fortune to shelters and began teaching young entrepreneurs who reminded him of the man he used to be. Every anniversary of that winter drive he took his car out alone and followed the same long road through the valley, pulling over where she had walked away, standing under the same wide stretch of sky. Each time he laid a single flower on the ground and whispered, "Thank you," not for staying, but for leaving. It took losing her to understand that silence could be the loudest truth, that dignity could cut deeper than anger, and that sometimes the person you tried to scare just ends up showing you how small your cruelty really was.